Hello and welcome back to HR Stew. My name is Regina Dyerly.
And I'm Holly Nehls.
And this is HR Stew.
In today's diverse and dynamic workplaces, discussions about religion and politics can be like a minefield, and a wrong step can lead you to extreme tension and conflict. But as HR professionals, we know that addressing these topics is sometimes inevitable, especially when they intersect with issues like diversity, inclusion, and employee well-being. Quick question, what are your personal experiences with handling politics and religion in the workplace?
I want to take a minute and introduce Shelby Evans. She's on all of our podcasts, but she's actually going to be a contributing member of the team. So welcome, Shelby.
Thank you, as always.
So some of my personal experience with handling politics and religion, it's more so related to friends and family and their conversations that they have with me about politics and religion in the workplace. And I just don't think it's appropriate when I tell my friends and family, like, talk about the weather, talk about how your weekend was, something fun you did, your children, you know, what they're doing in their lives. Don't bring up politics or religion because you don't know somebody's beliefs or somebody's upbringing and where that conversation could lead. Mm-hmm. It could lead to a heated argument. Somebody could be a diehard Republican, and then you have over here a diehard Democrat, and they're both arguing their point, and then, 30 minutes later it goes into a fight or something crazy or miscommunication on your beliefs. I just don't think it should be in the workplace. That's my opinion.
No, I definitely agree. I mean, we're certainly living in divisive times, and people have very strong opinions. There doesn't seem to be much middle ground anymore. It seems like you're on one side or the other. But most of the circumstances I've dealt with in regards to religion or politics at work, specifically religion, have been people asking for accommodations. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the responses by managers to those accommodations not being appropriate. Questioning. I have had a number of cases, especially when I lived in New York. I worked for bigger companies there, right? So there's just more of everything.
Right.
But there's accommodations for praying time or needing days off or being home by certain times. And there's all sorts of different things. And sometimes that is not convenient for a manager. So they're not as accepting because it's not convenient. Mm-hmm. And I think just navigating through that stuff sometimes is very difficult to make sure that everybody is feeling supported, but also doing the right thing. Certainly, as far as people discussing politics and religion in the workplace, some people cannot stop.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And regardless of how many times they've made other people uncomfortable or the other person has I really don't feel comfortable talking about this at work or whatever, some people will not stop, and then it does need to be escalated.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I would agree.
I like what you said, people feeling supported in their religious beliefs, political beliefs, whatever the case may be. I really like that word.
I do too. I think mine's more come from, a lot of the times over the years, has been more of a customer base, especially with, since what we all went through in 2020. That's where it really became a lesson learned of how to de-escalate situations when they do start bringing up political beliefs or asking questions or legitimacy, that kind of stuff. It's that sense of what you just said, asking for saying, hey, I don't feel comfortable talking about this in the workplace. Let's try to lead the conversation back to, why you called me in the first place or why you're here in the first place, kind of a thing. And it kind of goes back to what you said, Holly. I was raised where you can talk about this freely within your family and your close friends, but that's where it should be left because that's your comfort zones. And you are right. You might not know how somebody else might be thinking or believing or, how may they feel walking away from that conversation. And it could lead to some tensions. And I think of a conversation escalating, it could lead to then an investigation, depending upon if other things are said. So just leave it out. And if you have a question or maybe something you have to talk about, go to your manager. Go to someone who do feel confident in talking confidentially about it. So
I think one thing that, just as you were talking, I was listening, I promise. I was thinking one thing that's left off here is also sports teams.
Oh, yes.
Very decisive. Being from New York, and I'm an Islander fan. New York Islanders, let's go. Mm-hmm. But the Islander Ranger games, the Yankee, the Mets, it's just, it could be very, very contentious. People feel a lot of passion about their team. Yeah. It's just interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so to spark some conversation about some specific instances of this, today I want to dive into the real world scenarios of managing politics and religion in the workplace, but from an HR perspective. I'm going to give you a real problem or scenario, And I want you to role play this as if I were an employee or a manager coming to you with this issue and you are HR. All of these are inspired by real examples submitted online or from personal experiences. We're just going to dive into scenario 1. So the scenario is I'm a recent interviewee for a financial analyst role. I was interviewed by the manager of the financial department, specifically. Just me and them, after getting a rejection letter. I send you an email saying, during the interview, the interviewer did not ask a single question related to the position itself or finance at all. Instead, he grilled me on my immigration status. By the way, I'm not a U.S. citizen, but I have a temporary work authorization, and grilled me about my political views. He started with the question, tell me about your native language, and then through a series of other irrelevant and super unprofessional questions, including asking me if my family are well connected at home, and if I only care about the visa sponsorship when looking for a job. Then he went on to ask me my opinions on the Biden administration's policies and how I view the relations between the US and my home country. And the most ridiculous thing was I received an automated rejection email 1 hour after getting off the phone with this guy I interviewed with, which made me think he wasn't serious about interviewing me at all.
I'm going to start off with he really dodged a bullet there. That he's not going to work for that particular company.
True.
Really dodged a bullet. If I was the HR person and I received this email with all of this information, I would start the process on an investigation on the guy who was talking to him on the phone, the interviewer, and start an investigation of what was said and get all sides to the story. And then possibly look at, doing some training on the interview process and interview questions and make sure everything's set up and good to go.
Yeah, certainly this is a really concerning situation. I agree with him. I don't think that the hiring manager had any intention of hiring him. What was his purpose in wasting his time? He asked him not a single question. Obviously, every interview should be based on the functions of the job and your skills to complete those functions, right? That's the purpose of it. It's especially a phone interview. It's an initial interview.
Right.
So what was his purpose? Just he had his own folly or something.
His own agenda behind it.
Yeah. But, asking those questions are illegal in the United States. So that's truly concerning. And I think he should report it to somebody there. Now, it's not recorded. He can deny it and it could go nowhere. For sure, but it should still be reported.
Beyond that step, I would then also offer the interviewee a chance to do another phone screen interview with either myself or somebody else within a department to obviously see if they would be a selected candidate in the first place, to give them that chance, but then taking your guys' route as well, just to give them that opportunity.
It's just, what is bothering me about the story, because it is bothering me actually, is just the brazenness of 1 hour later sending the rejection email. It's just like he felt like totally righteous in behaving that way. He doesn't deserve to be a manager, in my opinion. I'm making that blanket bold statement.
Do you think offering him to interview with somebody else or offering him a position would set him up for success?
Not particularly his manager.
Yeah,
no.
I think unless they're planning on terminating the manager, I think that could be tricky. That's already the basis for hostility.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to put someone, this particular candidate, into that position or
it's hard
atmosphere.
Look, whenever we're presented information like this, right? It's always like, there's two sides to everything, right? But it's and this is this person's perception, so that you always have to factor that in. So based on this information, for him to say that he was asked no questions about the actual job, there's just ill intentions here.
Right.
Is this a fireable offense for that department manager?
Like Regina said, it's going to be a he said,
unless they recorded it, unless they had their voice memo on.
Yeah.
At the very least, it would be a written warning, for sure. This is a danger to the company. This is a real lawsuit.
I would say final written warning.
Yeah, this is but depending, we don't know. This might be a pattern of behavior. They may have other documented things. It could be termination.
True.
He's not just acting like this to candidates.
Right.
Would you also say moving forward that maybe this manager shouldn't be doing interviews by himself?
Yeah, probably.
I think Regina said he shouldn't be a manager.
Yeah, he not even be a manager.
So moving on to scenario 2, a little bit shorter. So this is a manager coming to you as the HR person. So the CMO of your company comes to you stating that one of their employees is consistently wearing a necklace expressing support for a current presidential candidate that they strongly disagree with, they being the CMO. For example, like Elmo Big Bird 2024. How do you handle that?
Well, I think first and foremost, that's why dress code policies are important. A lot of them will say you can't use offensive language, political statements, political slogans. I think it's really important to have that stuff in there because that's an easy way to address that without it seeming like it's targeted to them. That would be my first go-to. If it's not in there, let's do a revision to the dress code policy.
I don't understand why peers don't feel, not empowered, that might be the wrong word, but don't feel like they're able to say, hey, that makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't really like that.
People don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, people don't like
They're
conflict.
at work. They just want to do their job, and they don't want to deal with that because you're making an assumption based on the kind of the brazenness of having that identified with your person means you feel very strongly about it, right? So I may not want to have that conversation either. Shoot, I wouldn't want to have it as the HR person.
Right.
So let's just say you don't have the dress code policy that you could have this conversation, or you are having the dress code policy and they say, well, I have a right to display this. I have a, people will talk about their rights. Well, this is the policy and we do it to have a really balanced, fair, pleasant work environment, but that conversation should obviously be held privately, still being supportive to her beliefs, but just keeping it clean. Either side, it doesn't matter. We're just not looking to have any discourse in the workplace over this. Work is hard enough.
Right.
I actually had a previous manager before that at one point during an election year, she came in for about a month straight wearing a political hat, expressing her values towards one of the candidates. And no matter how much we were bringing it up to the other managers or our practice owner, that the amount of times it was making us feel uncomfortable or, she was in front of our customers, that kind of stuff, they just didn't know what to do about it because we didn't have a dress code policy regarding this kind of stuff. And then when it did come to election day, she wore like full outfit supporting that individual from the hat she was wearing. And it was one of those things that, it just never got addressed, but also some of us didn't really know how to face her and feel comfortable facing her because it was our manager kind of a thing.
Yeah.
What did the owner say when you went to the owner?
We were just told that he's taking care of it on his own, but clearly
But he didn't.
It wasn't.
Or he did talk to her and she just, that's the thing. It's like if she was brazen enough to wear a full outfit that shows your political affiliation, you don't care.
Yeah.
Because that's clearly unprofessional in the business place. I have feelings.
Clearly unprofessional. I think we all have feelings.
Yeah.
So this is scenario 3. This is a manager coming to you. I recently hired a new employee for my team. Everyone thinks she is a great addition and she is clearly very talented as demonstrated in her interviews. The problem came up during her first day when we supplied her with a company laptop. She said she would need it configured in Linux-based operating system because her religion does not allow her to use Apple or Microsoft-owned operating systems. We only currently have hardware configurations for Mac OS or Windows, and our expectation was that she would use Windows along with the rest of her team. She says that she can fulfill all her job duties without Windows, and I'm inclined to believe her, but corporate policy dictates Windows is what we use, and my IT department manager is not on board with her request for Linux.
Well, okay, so number one, the operating systems in a technical job were absolutely in the job description. I'm always like, let's accommodate if you can, but this feels a little icky to me. The operating systems were in the job description. And if they weren't, wow, but I can't believe they weren't. This is an IT position. Oh, is this an IT position?
It's not. It doesn't describe what type of position it is.
Either way, all job postings and job descriptions.
Even for HR, we have what
Yeah.
operating systems we use.
Yeah, must be
Right, so-
proficient
Or it
in
comes up in
Word.
the interview of, hey,
Yeah.
what systems are you used to using or are you operating on? You know what I mean?
So the two largest secure business platforms are against her religion. I'm going to have to Google this after to see what religion this might be because I've never heard of that. This is new and I love new things, but that's super interesting. Like if there is a way for them to do this securely, maybe potentially, but it sounds like the IT manager doesn't think that that's appropriate. I mean, it's security issues. Linux is what I'm not an IT person.
It's like more of an open
It's
operating system,
yeah.
I think there's more threats, so you can edit it more.
I don't know. This whole thing is just really perplexing. It's like, no, you took the job. It most likely was in the job description. If not, why didn't you mention it prior? Because now you're expecting people to figure out really complicated alternative solutions for you that are outside of the company policies. I don't think that she's meeting the minimum job requirements.
I feel like this is one of those accommodations that would come down to we just can't accommodate in the own best interest of the company because we'd have to completely switch.
Secure.
Yeah, it's not secure. We'd have to switch our system.
Look what just happened with MGM. One employee took them down. One employee.
I wonder if that employee still works there.
I don't know.
Sorry, I got sidetracked.
Yeah, what happened there? I didn't know about the one employee thing.
I don't know all the details. I'd have to do a little more research, but I remember reading just one article where it was like one employee, somebody called to like validate information. They gave them information. They got in. That's my understanding. I have to like validate that, but and then people couldn't get out of their rooms. They couldn't use the elevators. They were using manual paper check-ins. I mean, weeks.
Can you imagine hiking
In
up
Las
all those
Vegas!
flights of stairs? Oh, I'd be exhausted.
You know?
All right, so scenario 4, this is an employee coming to you. I think my boss is treating me unfairly because of my religion. I'm friendly, work hard, and do a good job, but my new boss does not like my religion. He asked me about it, makes fun of it, and even called something important to me a, quote, cult card. I'm worried this is affecting my job because I've missed out on promotions to less qualified people and the only one who gets in trouble for using my phone at work when we're supposedly allowed to have our phones. I also heard that my boss might be training someone else to take my job, and it seems like the only reason for this is because of my religion. I can't prove it though, and I don't have proof of our past conversations about my religion.
Well, discrimination against religion. This actually also sounds severe and pervasive, which constitutes for hostile work environment as well. So I think this is a really tricky situation. One, they need to start documenting everything. And if there are witnesses, circle back with that person after and say, did you hear that? Just want to make sure I'm calibrating myself here. You don't have to make it sound like you're trying to get someone in trouble, but just, use that reasoning. If nothing comes of it, I don't know, I probably would seek out a lawyer, honestly. But no matter what, just keep on doing your job. Do not give any ammunition for them to
Fire you, eliminate your position.
I was trying to think of a better, more pleasant word.
Yeah.
Unjobbed.
Yeah, I definitely think if it was being brought to me from, as the HR person in this organization, I would start a conversation like, what dates did this happen? Do you have any documentation? Were there any witnesses? And then start talking to witnesses from an HR perspective and try and get a grasp on what's going on.
This might be insidious. He may be doing it when no one else is around. I mean, this does seem targeted to this specific person.
Yeah.
So sometimes this stuff is really hard for HR, for us to prove.
Right.
It's really unfortunate. Yeah.
I'd be so interested to see what this manager would say in response to once an investigation is put into place and if you do have witnesses and
you may want to try to record it, like have your voice memo ready. And you may end up you have to delete it if nothing happens, but that just might be something they have to do.
Yeah. In the state of Colorado, you can record when one person has knowledge of the recording.
There's a lot of states like that, but I mean,
I only remember Colorado.
Even if you just show it to HR, it can't be used in court. Like it validates your story.
Yeah.
You know? Do whatever you got to do.
For this next segment, we continue going to the forum Ask HR, where people can ask HR questions to professionals and get answers. So this question comes from user anyquantity3640. The title is, Any Way to Ascertain Interviewees' Political Leaning Without Actually Asking? It reads, My mom and my brother will be interviewing candidates for a caretaker/companion for my mom. They live in a very politically red area, but my mom is very liberal. I tease her that she's probably the only registered Democrat in her district. She's also very outspoken. Obviously, someone with a very opposite political views would not be a good companion for her. Are there subtle ways to find out someone's political leanings without asking them straight out?
I don't think you have to ask. I think you have to talk about your mom, and talk about how passionate they are about these things and kind of just leave it open. Tell those stories and then say nothing and see what happens. I mean, there's things you could do about, and this is a different type of job, right? I mean, they're like, as a companion, they're doing activities and different things. And so I would say you could ask about their personal interests and, nothing inappropriate, but you can open it up to see what you could gauge, but you may not find out.
And I would also wonder too, does it really matter? If I say to you, my mom is a very political person, she's going to talk about her political views, how do you feel about that? And you say, I'm okay with that. I will, listen and acknowledge, and I don't have to participate in the conversation or have a banter back and forth with her or try and support or change her views into my views, but I am able to be a caretaker.
Right. If you don't care about her views,
right,
then it doesn't matter.
Right.
Also, I think a trial period probably. So if you have a mom.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, like a mom that, is very passionate about certain things. I mean, maybe it's good to have a trial for both people.
I think you can also care for a person by just doing your job than caring. But when I was first going over the scenario, to me, it sounds like they're taking this into their own personal hands. So then I'm wondering, are they going through a healthcare company or a home healthcare company? Do they have any policies?
They're not. They're interviewing personally.
Just personal.
Well, no, they could be using an agency to send them there.
So then I'm I wonder what the agency, do they have any policies over this or how they address this? Because to me, it just sounds like they were personally interviewing people for themselves. They
have to be careful because it almost sounds like they want to discriminate on people based on their political beliefs. So, they want a good companion for their mom, which is totally appropriate and acceptable and all those things and wonderful. But you don't have to have the same views to be a good companion, like Holly said.
They're focusing on it, I feel in the wrong way. They should be caring more about the care their mother's going to be giving, not the political views.
But this is a big trigger point for her, so they're thinking, if I hire someone that feels opposed to what she does, is that going to cause stress for her? Is this going to not be a harmonious, situation? Caretakers in general put up with a lot of nonsense. So I think it's probably in most cases is not an issue.
I agree. And most home health agencies try to fit the caretaker, the provider, with the client.
If he's honest about how she is, people will rule themselves out.
Agreed.
So that's what he has to do. She is very liberal. She's very passionate. She loves to talk about this. She loves to have conversations about it. Is a scenario that you feel comfortable with. Give them enough information to make a decision. Their time is worth just as much as her time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone's here voluntarily.
Thanks, Shelby and Regina. That's all for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed, please subscribe and leave a review. If you have any HR stories or questions you would like to share, message us on Instagram at hr.stew. I'm Holly.
And I'm Regina.
And I'm Shelby.
And we will see you next time on HR Stew.